Hey everyone, welcome to the Find Your Purpose webinar, where we're just going to take a few minutes together to dive a little deeper into how we can discover our passion and our purpose even when life feels confining and small. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to welcome everybody to the webinar and make sure that you have time to get settled. I want to encourage you to grab a journal if you have one. I talk about this in my email newsletter. This is my absolute favorite journal. It's from Shinola, and I love using these. So if you've got a journal, a pen, you're going to want something, because I'm going to be offering up some questions, some ways to consider where you are right now. And I know that you're here for a reason. And I wish I could speak with each of you individually about what that reason is, and perhaps we'll be able to connect in a coaching group in the future. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just address the things that I hear so frequently from my own clients and leaders that I work with that I know are probably on your heart as well. So if you're new here, my name is Nicole, and I have spent most of my career just engaging with people individually in a lot of different settings who are trying to figure out the gap between what they're living, what they're experiencing, and what they dream for and what they hope. And that's come in the form of about 10 years that I spent in private practice as a therapist, and then several years in ministry as well as a pastor. And also in that role, I did a lot of leadership development, particularly around folks in their 20s coming into vocational ministry. So I've spent most of my life helping people who either feel stuck, or if they're not stuck, they're just wanting to level up into that purpose and that passion. And so what I want to do, even just in the next few minutes, is come alongside of you as you're thinking through these questions, as you're thinking about what it would look like to live bigger than what you're experiencing right now. We've all kind of been there, where we're trying to figure out how to maybe just get out of bed when life feels like it's knocked you down, or how to start living into that dream that you've been thinking about for a while, or life has just presented you with an opportunity, maybe for the first time, where you really feel like you need to level up your leadership, level up your own rhythms, your own understanding of how you engage with the world. So all of those different reasons, there's usually kind of a transition going on in our life, but those are all great reasons to kind of take a pause and take stock of where you are and where you are trying to go. And by the way, if you're thinking to yourself, none of those things are me, I am literally just trying to figure out my passion or purpose for the first time, this is also a great place to start. You know, I think that purpose and calling can feel elusive, like it's this thing that like only certain people get access to knowing. And we listen to documentaries or podcasts or whatever, and you might hear a story of someone who's like, yeah, when I was 13, God visited me in a dream and I knew I was going to be in ministry. And I just want you to know those stories are valid and real and true. But that is not my story. That is not how I've experienced calling. And for many, many of us, finding our calling is more like an evolution. It's more like a journey where we're in the process of discovering who we really are, and perhaps in the process of actually believing that our life is worth pursuing, like what we have to give to the world is worth working at, because it is so, so important. So living big, this idea of living big, it starts with looking inward and looking upward. So I want to give you guys just a couple of little visuals that are going to help along the way. And these are things that you can go ahead and record, like sort of write down if that's helpful to you. So I'm going to share my screen now and share a couple of things with you. So here we go. All right, so we call this living big when life feels small, because life has felt small. And we launched these coaching groups in the pandemic, and surprise, surprise, we're still in it. And all of us are having to reshape our lives and refix our eyes and rediscover our priorities. So if that's you, I just want to give you just a second to think about that. Like, what has shifted in you in this time? Throughout this pandemic, I've been coaching individual clients and several groups, and the level of life change that people are experiencing, their life might still look the same on the outside, But what they're experiencing on the inside is maybe an opportunity for new levels of awareness, new levels of purpose, maybe a sense of, even when the world feels out of control, I am responsible for my life and for my dreams. I'm responsible for my habits, for the way that I sort of find flourishing and fulfillment in my life. And so if that's you, I want you to know you are not alone. Lots of folks are going through that same thing. We're asking this question: how can I live big? How can I live into the fullness of what God has for me, even when life feels really small? So my overarching sort of philosophy is right here in front of you, that our passion plus our priorities equal our purpose. If we understand our passion, if we're able to engage kind of with confidence in the gifting that God has given us, and we take that and we're able to create priorities, to understand priorities in our daily life, the habits that we have in our life, then we'll move toward our purpose. And this is, like I said, an evolving experience. It's a journey that you can get on, that you have to continue to be on. And I feel like every time life presents you a transition, that may be a transition from being single to being married. It might be the transition to your first career job. It may be from working out of the home to working in the home, or it may be if you have children and they are empty, you're empty nesting and you're kind of engaging with, well, what does this season of my life look like? All of those transitions are opportunities for us to sharpen in and refine and allow this idea of purpose to evolve. So I've got a couple of verses that I want to just bring you to, whether you are walking closely with Jesus or you're just curious about faith or interested. I want you to know, first and foremost, in our context today, Jesus has created a life designed for you to flourish. So when we listen to the life and teachings of Jesus, when we look at what God says about humanity, I just want to offer you an opportunity to engage with the idea that this God of the universe, that you may or may not be very acquainted with, has said things about the role, the worth of human beings, and it's very specific, and it speaks directly into our time. So this first verse is from Acts 17, and it says, "From one man he made all the nations." Now this is talking about Adam, the first man, that God took one man and he made all people through this man, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. And I love this verse because at first glance, you might be like, okay, thank you for the history lesson. But in reality, this is saying something very important about human beings. It's saying that we have an intentional God who makes intentional plans for you, and that exactly where you are right now is where you're intended to be. Like, God has appointed time in history for you to live in. And if that feels like a big call, if that feels like living big, it absolutely is. It is about living big. It's about having the faith to believe that exactly where you are is where you're meant to be, and that God actually has work for you to do, good work for you to do, right in the place that you are, even if it feels small and confining, or even if you feel confused and sort of between, in the in-between of spaces between what your dreams are and what you're experiencing. Right there is where God is shaping you to become this person that he can use, to become this person that is able to live fully into the life that you have. And a lot of times, what we have to experience in order to live fully into that purpose is the things in us that stand in our way of experiencing that purpose. And when we're in our coaching groups, we spend a lot of time talking about the things that can keep us from experiencing our purpose, because that's a big part of what holds us back, is these pitfalls, these obstacles. They can be external obstacles that need to be addressed. They can be, a lot of times, internal obstacles, what we believe about ourselves, our own confidence, etc. And there's ways to work through that. There's ways to work through that in the encouragement of a group. So that is one of the things that the Bible says about our gifts. The second one is from Isaiah 49, and it says, "Before I was born, the Lord called me. From my mother's womb, he has spoken my name." So that's, again, that very personal idea of a personal God who knew when you would live, who knew what your life would look like, and who has created influence for you, whether that's in two little babies that you're raising right now, or a team that you manage at work, or an opportunity that you have to use your voice in government, society, in your community. Whatever that is for you right now, that was your appointed thing right now. He knows where he's taking you, but he also knows where he has you right now. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we give God, if we're desiring to follow Jesus, is actually not holding that in contempt, but believing that God really designed where we are for a purpose, even if we're in an in-between time. So I ask you today, do you believe this? Do you believe what this says about human beings, and specifically what it says about you, that you were appointed a specific time and place? And as you think about that, if you have your journal, I just want to invite you to maybe jot down a couple of names that come to mind, like who's in your life right now for a reason or a sphere of influence that you're in. Just take a minute to write down a couple of things. Don't worry too much about what they are. Just let them come and write them down right now. Just take a minute to do so. Okay, I'm going to take us back to sharing a couple of more slides with you guys while you finish writing that down. Okay, here we go. Okay. There's that Isaiah verse if you want to write down that reference. Okay, next step. So let's talk a little bit about how you discover your purpose or refine your purpose if you're in a transitional season or you're asking that question of what does it look like to live big when my life feels small. So right in front of you is a diagram that I've created. This is actually from my book, Brave Enough. I forgot to mention that I write books, so that could be another resource for you if you're looking for that personal conversation, which is what I think about books, is that they're a personal conversation between me and you. And I wrote a book called Brave Enough, and in that book, I talk about like embracing the calling that is placed on your life. And I put this slide together as a way to describe how you can know your calling. And I'm going to ask you 4 questions. And I'll just let you know that in our coaching groups, this is the stuff that we dive into together. Because if you get tripped up at all when I'm working through some of this material, know that when we're working through this material in a coaching group, I'm there to help you like walk through that. And other people in the group, we do small groups, usually 8 or 10 people only. And in that smaller setting, we're able to kind of like refine some of these questions together and ask questions about them. But I'm going to run through them quickly just to give you some tools to work with today. So your calling, this idea of charisma, that's actually the Greek word that means the results of grace. And so when we talk about charisma in American culture, we talk about that spark that you have, that fire, that X factor. But I love that actually this verse comes from the Bible, or this word comes from the Greek. It's in the Bible. And in the Bible, it actually talks about your gifting. That's what charisma is. So we all have charisma. It just looks different on each one of us based on these 4 other rings that are surrounding this diagram. So the first one is gifting. The gifting is the actual outward expression of things that you love. Gifting is things that come easily to you. It's not that they are not hard, but it's that the way that you engage with them, they come easily to you. And you can ask yourself, what are some of my gifts? What are those things that I love to bring to the world? The second way, if we go around to the right, that you can understand your calling is an inner experience. And I love to call this God's voice. I believe that's what it is, the Spirit of God working in us, drawing us into our wiring and who He's made us to be. But other people in positive psychology might call this flow. It's where you experience like time stopping. You're so engrossed in what you're doing that it's as if time stands still and you don't even notice that time is going by. That's called a flow, where you're doing that kind of work. And for you, that might be listening closely to someone. It might be creating beautiful things. It might be like pounding it out in an Excel spreadsheet because you have an incredible gift of administration, which is so needed in the world. It may be stepping in when there's a crisis and being able to show up present and confident. Any of those things would be those descriptions of gifts. And I want you to think about that question. When's the last time that you lost track of time? What was happening in your life where you just weren't even aware that time was passing? And maybe make a note of what that is, that inner experience of what your gifting and your purpose may be. That third one is outward confirmation. These are the things that people tell you about how they experience you and how they experience your gifts. And this is a lot of times one of the things we really need in life, because we can be very blind to how our good gifts are impacting the world. And so the question I like to ask in this sphere is, what would friends say that you're good at? If if you were to ask a good friend, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Which is a bold move. A lot of people are scared to do that, but I'm telling you, it is such a rich experience to ask a friend that, what is it that I'm good at? And let them provide some outward confirmation of that inner experience that you're having. And then this final one is timing. And this is an important one that I think often gets left out in calling material, which is that all three of those other things can align, and it might not be the right time for that to be fully realized. God may still be working something out in your character. He may be calling you to serve, whether that's your children or your aging parents or a particular situation that you're in. It may not be your time. And that doesn't invalidate any of the other questions. It just means that God is asking you to wait and to work with what you have in front of you right now. Doesn't mean you can't live out your ultimate purpose, but its fullness may not be ready to be recognized yet. And you can kind of engage with what might be happening in you and through you, where God is keeping your world small on purpose. And that is a thing that I talk about, particularly with women a lot, as their leadership development journeys don't tend to be very linear. They often have lots of bunny trails and side to side sort of experiences. And that's a part, I think, of this unique way of finding our purpose, is that sometimes the timing isn't quite right yet. So that's what calling is all about. It's what we talk about in coaching groups. I love those exercises because I'm trying to help people get engaged with what they love. And I'm thinking of one of our coaching groups this summer where actually 2 times in our coaching groups, I had 2 clients who both came to the realization that they had lost track of what they loved. They had been living so reactive in their life, just from one task to the other, that this homework was so challenging to just ask the question, what do you love to do? What do you lose track of time doing? And they could not access anything that they loved. And I was so glad they came to the coaching group, because through that process over those 4 weeks, they actually were able to, with a few homework exercises and the encouragement of the group, to find that track again, to find that love again, and to work back towards the fullness of themselves. And that's what can happen when we really dive in, is we become aware of places where we may have blind spots, where we may have been avoiding things that we need to deal with, where God might be calling us deeper in with Him. And it comes out of asking these questions and following them through. So another exercise that we use in coaching groups that's been super helpful, I just want to share with you for free today. And it's this exercise right here. I hope you guys can see this whole thing. It's a fill drain exercise. And this is a very simple method to raise your awareness about what your purpose might be, about what you love in the world, and also to raise your awareness about places where you might be having your boundaries violated, where you might not be in touch with some things that might need tending, that you've allowed to grow up or crop up in your own soul or in your relationships or in your home. And you want to start addressing those, but we want to start by just like raising awareness. So I invite my clients to do a fill drain exercise. And the first way we do that is we just take like 10 minutes to do a brain dump of everything we can think about in life. Small things, it doesn't have to be big things, small things that fill our tank, that make us feel present and peaceful and fulfilled. And then small things too, and big things, small and big things that drain that tank, that actually drip out. What are those things? So I want to give you a moment right now on your journal. Just, you don't have this pretty exercise, but we are going to give it to you as a free gift. So between now and then, I want you to write for 30 seconds, like, what comes to mind when I say that? When I say what fills you, what fills you? Just write one thing right now. Perfect. Good. And then what drains you? Can be small, can be big, either one. I mean, for me, I'd be like the news, like the news right now. So what we're trying to do is get you more in touch with who you really are and what impacts you. We have so many things coming into our minds, just like we're just inundated with information and with decisions, that a lot of times we need to get in touch with what is my wiring? What is my temperament? What are the things that really fill me up? And what are the things that really drain me? Now, we can't remove all the drains from your life. Some of you are like, quarantine, pandemics, like virtual school. I get it. Like, there's a lot of things out of our control that can be draining you. But what we want to experience is that we're putting more in the fill zone than what is in the drain zone, so that we can stay in the black. We can stay in the positive area in our life. And the more things we have that are draining us, the more attention we need to pay to what it is that fills us. And if that is really out of whack, if you're just full of drain things and you just can't even think of fill things, then I want to invite you to use this almost as an experiment, kind of a way for you to keep a diary in your life. Like for the next 5 days, just pay attention and look for small things that can fill you. And a lot of times that's where we get tripped up. We don't choose small things. Small things can fill you, especially when you are aware of them. I mean, 10 minutes to read a book can fill me. 10 minutes on the couch, just with my eyes closed and quiet, can fill me. That is not hard. Like, we have that time. It may require you to sacrifice some other things, but those things are accessible to us, and they can create in us like a little shift, just a little shift in our soul. We talk about in our coaching group, small is big. Small is big. Small changes can lead to huge transformation in your life. It's actually, we think we need huge changes to create huge transformation, when in reality, if you start with small changes, they add up to huge transformation in your life. So this is the place that you can start if this is something that would be helpful to you. So we've covered calling, we've covered kind of the fill drain exercise as an example of the kind of things that we do in our coaching groups to keep you from embracing this purpose, from embracing yourself. Another thing we talk about, like I said, in coaching groups is pitfalls, internal obstacles that can keep you from moving forward. That's a place where we really do spend quite a bit of time coaching. And I love hearing how my clients often have similar pathways, similar things that hold them back, and they're actually able to sharpen one another in those places and find some new ways around that because of our different personalities, our different circumstances in life. There's all kinds of things that can hold us back, but really living big starts with embracing the idea that your life is worth it, that you have an important role to play in this world, that God has actually given us these promises in scripture, that life is really important. The very life that you have is important to live. And all of my books, podcasts, coaching, all of it is about helping you realize that potential, helping you lean into it even when it's hard, helping you understand how to redeem those hard things in life and to find healing and a way forward. Because if we don't address that, then we're leaving out a really important part of life. And one of the reasons that we launched these coaching groups during this pandemic was because part of working through and working toward who we're called to be is being able to own our struggles. That's what The Struggle is Real, the book, is all about. It's about owning the struggle and saying, all right, this is a struggle, but it's a worthy struggle. And it's a struggle that I want to undertake. And I am worth the investment. I am worth the time, because when I am at my best, everything around me gets better and everyone around me gets better. When I'm at my best, everything around me gets better. Everyone around me gets better. I want to invite you to write that down and start to actually think, like, what would life be like if I believed that? What would I start doing differently if I fully believed that? How would I invest in myself if I wanted to believe that that was true? That me being at my best is an incredibly important part of me fulfilling my purpose and actually serving and loving the people around me really well. So, all right. Let's see what else we want to talk about. Anything else that we should cover? We talked about the fill drain exercise. We talked about taking control of something. So that's what I want to invite you to in that awareness piece. I'm good at awareness. I sometimes forget the action. In that awareness piece on the fill drain exercise that you filled out, what's one step that you could take tomorrow to engage with the fill or to stop the drain? When you look at what you wrote down, what's one thing you could do tomorrow, something between 5 and 15 minutes that you could do to engage in the fill side? To remember, small is big, small changes make big differences. So that's what we're about today, and that's what we're about in these coaching groups. So this is a little taste of what a coaching group feels like, and we've put together a really special group that I have loved the feedback. It's kind of like an intense, let's spend 30 days together and really launch into a new level. And so this is a 4-week coaching group. It's a private group led by me. All the groups are small, just 8 to 10 people. And in those groups, we explore these kinds of questions, and we work through a process that starts with purpose and ends with action. So that by the end of that coaching group, you not only are recognizing that there are many people around that also are pursuing the same kinds of things as you, but you're also able to have a practical, actionable plan that you can use to move toward that purpose, to move towards your passion and your priorities in a way that really changes things. The amount of growth and change that I've experienced with these clients, even in just these first few months of launching these groups, has been incredible. And I'm a believer in coaching groups because I'm a beneficiary of coaching groups. I've discovered the passion that I have for coaching has come out of my own growth through coaching groups where I've met some incredible friends and mentors, and through personal coaching, individual experiences with people who walked me through different seasons of life and continue to do so. And so my heart is to be able to offer that to those who are in a place where they want to make that kind of investment. And they know that in order to do so, they need to put some skin in the game. And that's what coaching groups are really about, is you kind of signing on the line saying, my best is important. And because my best is important, I want to make an investment in this group. So we spend 30 days diving in deeper to true calling and passions. You'll walk away with a better understanding of yourself and an action plan to take you toward and on that journey. And more than anything, we have a lot of fun and we get to experience a lot of growth together. So if you're interested in a coaching group, we're going to be launching them in October, and you can just go to my website, NicoleUnice.com/living-big. So little dash, living-big. You can find out about coaching groups there. I want to encourage you to not wait. If you're feeling like, yes, this is the kind of thing that's going to help me move forward, you're going to get personalized attention, specific answers to your questions, and just like a really kick butt group of people that you get to work with. So would love to see you in a coaching group coming up in October. Thank you so much for coming to the webinar today. I hope that you got some great takeaways, maybe filled up a page in your journal. Don't forget your exercise for tomorrow. Look at that fill drain and ask yourself, what's one thing I can do to start making these changes? Small as big leads to great transformation. Thanks for coming.